The Afghan sun hung like molten copper over forward operating base Rhino, transforming the desert into a shimmering crucible of heat and dust. Wave after wave of thermal distortion rose from the tan-colored HESCO barriers that ring the compound like ancient fortress walls. These massive wire and fabric fortifications stood 12 feet high, filled with sand and rock, creating walls thick enough to stop rocket-propelled grenades and most small arms fire. Scorch marks proved they'd been tested plenty. Lance Corporal James Davis wiped sweat from his forehead for what felt like the 100th time that morning. 9 hours on gate duty in 115-degree heat would break anyone. But Marines didn't break. They endured. They joked. They survived. "Here we go again," Davis muttered to his partner, Corporal Ryan Williams, who was nursing his third energy drink of the shift. The can was warm, practically cooking in his hand, but anything with caffeine was gold out here. $20 says it's another contractor who can't read a map. Williams squinted through the glare, watching the dust-covered white Toyota Hilux crawl toward the serpentine barriers like some desert mirage materializing from the heat shimmer. These vehicles were everywhere in Afghanistan, reliable as sunrise, tougher than most of the men who drove them. "Nah, man," Williams replied, his voice thick with the particular exhaustion that comes from breathing superheated air for hours. "Probably some State Department bureaucrat coming to lecture us about winning hearts and minds while we're dodging mortars every other night." The Toyota's engine ticked as it cooled, that metallic clicking sound that meant it had been driven hard and fast across rough terrain. The driver emerged first, a local interpreter they recognized, Khalid maybe, or Hamid, one of the good ones who risked his life daily to help American forces, knowing the Taliban would behead him if they ever got the chance. He moved around to the rear passenger door with practiced deference, the kind that came from years of navigating the complex social hierarchies of military bases. That's when she stepped out. She couldn't have been more than 5'6", maybe 130 soaking wet, dark brown hair pulled back in a simple, no-nonsense ponytail that had seen better days. Jeans that looked like they'd survived a dozen deployments, worn thin at the knees, but still functional. A plain tan jacket despite the murderous heat, the kind civilians wore when they didn't understand that out here, you dressed for survival, not style. A small black backpack slung over one shoulder, the type a college student might carry to class. Not what you'd expect to see at a forward operating base in an active war zone. No body armor, no tactical vest, no weapons visible. Nothing that said she belonged here. Her face was young, late 30s at most, smooth skin that hadn't been weathered by years in the sandbox. But her eyes were different. Old eyes, alert eyes, the kind that had seen things, processed things, cataloged threats, and calculated odds, while most people were still trying to figure out what was happening. Those eyes swept the entry control point with unsettling precision. Guard towers, blast walls, firing positions, defense perimeters. She took it all in within seconds, her gaze moving with the efficiency of a security camera programmed to miss nothing. Davis and Williams exchanged glances, then both broke into grins. "Oh, this is going to be good," Williams said under his breath. Davis stepped forward, his M4 carbine hanging casually from its sling. The weapon was an extension of his body after 9 months in country. "Ma'am, this is a forward operating base in an active combat zone. Are you lost? The green zone's about 400 meters that way." He gestured vaguely westward, not bothering to hide the smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. The woman didn't respond immediately. Her expression remained neutral, almost blank. She reached into her jacket. Both Marines tensed slightly, their bodies responding to training before their minds caught up. She produced a military ID card and a manila envelope covered with official stamps and seals. Red ink, classification markers. She slid them across the checkpoint table without a word. Her hands caught Davis's attention. They weren't the soft, manicured hands of embassy personnel. They weren't the pale, unused hands of headquarters staff. These were working hands, calloused along the fingers, a faint scar across the knuckles of her right hand, nails cut short and practical. The kind of hands that had gripped things, carried things, done things that left permanent marks. Williams picked up the ID, studying it with exaggerated care. Well, says here you're authorized. He looked her up and down with theatrical skepticism. Though I gotta say, ma'am, you don't exactly look dressed for the occasion. This isn't Kabul Fashion Week. A few other Marines had wandered over, drawn by curiosity and boredom in equal measure. Within moments, half a dozen service members had found reasons to be near the entry control point, all wearing the same amused expressions. $20 says she's a journalist trying to embed, one whispered. Nah, she's gotta be NGO, another replied. Some humanitarian aid coordinator who watched too many war movies. The woman stood perfectly still. She didn't fidget, didn't shift her weight, didn't look uncomfortable under their scrutiny. She simply waited with the patience of someone who had waited in far worse places. Davis processed her paperwork, running her ID through their system. The computer took its sweet time. Afghan internet speeds were legendary for all the wrong reasons. While they waited, Williams couldn't resist. So what brings you to our little slice of paradise, ma'am? Here to audit our paperwork? Make sure we're being culturally sensitive while people are shooting at us? His tone was friendly enough, but underneath ran a current of condescension that was hard to miss. Still nothing. She didn't rise to the bait. Sergeant Ryan Thompson approached, an infantry squad leader with 2 previous deployments and the swagger that came with surviving them. He looked the woman over and shook his head with a chuckle. Another desk jockey getting their combat action ribbon the easy way. 6 months in an air-conditioned talk, then back to the States with war stories about how tough Afghanistan was. Low laughter rippled through the gathered Marines. The computer finally beeped. Davis read the screen, his eyebrows rising slightly. Huh, checks out. Says you're authorized for the TOC and pretty much everywhere else on base. He looked up at her with renewed curiosity. What's your MOS, ma'am? What do you do? For the first time she spoke. Her voice was quiet, measured, with a slight southwestern accent. Texas, maybe, or New Mexico. I work. That was it. 2 words, no elaboration. Williams laughed outright. Well, that clears it right up. Mystery solved, boys. Davis stamped her paperwork and slid it back across. Welcome to FOB Rhino, ma'am. Try not to get in the way of the real warriors while you're here. Things can get pretty exciting when the shooting starts. The woman collected her documents, tucking them back into her jacket with precise movements. A Humvee pulled up, her escort to the command center. As she moved toward it, she passed close to Thompson. He couldn't resist one more jab. Hope you brought sunscreen, ma'am. That desk tan you've got won't last long out here. More chuckles from the group. She paused for just a fraction of a second, her dark eyes meeting Thompson's. There was something in that gaze that made him unconsciously straighten, though he couldn't explain why. It wasn't anger or offense. It was assessment, the way a professional evaluates a potential problem and decides whether it's worth addressing. Then she moved on, climbing into the Humvee without a word. The vehicle drove away toward the center of the base, dust billowing in its wake. As it disappeared, the Marines returned to their posts, already forgetting about her. Just another face passing through their war. Davis shook his head, grinning. Man, I almost feel bad for whoever has to babysit her. Probably some Pentagon bureaucrat's daughter getting the Afghanistan experience to pad her resume. Williams nodded, cracking open another energy drink. Yeah, she'll probably last a week before she's crying to go home. They always do. Neither of them noticed what the woman had been looking at during those silent minutes at the checkpoint. While they'd been joking and processing paperwork, her eyes had identified every defensive position, every field of fire, every potential vulnerability in their perimeter. She'd counted the guards, assessed their readiness, noted the wear patterns on their equipment that told her how often they actually expected contact. She'd seen everything, and she'd said nothing. Because in her experience, the best way to understand people was to let them underestimate you first. The Humvee carried her deeper into FOB Rhino, toward a briefing that would change everything these confident warriors thought they knew about war, about skill, and about who the deadliest person in the room really was. The Tactical Operations Center sat at the heart of FOB Rhino like a concrete bunker buried in sand, reinforced walls 3 feet thick, a ceiling designed to withstand rocket attacks in mortar rounds. This structure had survived 3 direct hits and countless near misses. Shrapnel scars covered the exterior walls like acne, each mark a testament to violence survived. Inside, the temperature was a blessed 20 degrees cooler than the inferno outside, maintained by generators that ran 24 hours a day, burning through fuel like water through sand. The constant hum of air conditioning was the soundtrack of command. Multiple flat-screen monitors lined the walls, displaying drone feeds, satellite imagery, and real-time intelligence updates from across the region. Maps covered with acetate overlays, communications equipment with enough cables to strangle an elephant, computers running tactical software that cost more than most houses. This was the nerve center, the brain, the place where America's war was planned and coordinated. The room hummed with the particular energy that preceded high-stakes operations, a mixture of adrenaline and focus, and the dark humor men used to mask fear. Around the central briefing table stood America's most elite warriors, Navy SEALs with salt-weathered faces and thousand-yard stares, Delta Force operators whose very presence was technically classified, Marine Force recon scouts who could disappear into terrain like smoke, Army Rangers whose dress uniforms would barely contain all their combat decorations. These weren't weekend warriors or fresh recruits. The combined combat experience in this room exceeded 2 centuries. These men had kicked down doors in Fallujah when that city was hell on earth. They'd hunted Taliban commanders through the mountains of Tora Bora. They'd executed surgical strikes in a dozen countries most Americans couldn't find on a map. Lieutenant Marcus Jennings, a SEAL Team 6 operator with a beard that skirted regulation and a reputation that exceeded it, was mid-sentence describing a compound breach technique when the door opened. She walked in. The woman from the gate, still in her civilian clothes, still carrying just that small backpack. She moved quietly along the wall, found an empty chair in the back corner, and sat down without acknowledging anyone. She pulled out a tablet and began studying it with focused intensity. Conversation died mid-word. Jennings stopped talking, his mouth still half open. Every head in the room turned. "What the hell?" whispered Petty Officer First Class Derek Thompson. "Who the hell is she?" His teammate, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Wade, shrugged. "Probably some CIA analyst. Langley sends them sometimes to observe real-world applications of intelligence gathering." He said it with barely concealed disdain. Captain Bradley Harrison, Delta Force, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest. At 42, he was one of the most experienced men in the room. He studied the woman with narrowed eyes. "She doesn't move like an analyst." "What's that supposed to mean?" Thompson asked. "Watch her eyes. She's not nervous, not intimidated. She's mapping the room." Thompson looked again, then grinned. "Maybe she's just looking for the exit so she can run when the grown-ups start talking about actual combat." Laughter rippled through the group. Staff Sergeant Alex Mitchell, an Army Ranger with a Bronze Star and 3 Purple Hearts, raised his voice slightly. "Hey, sweetheart, the coffee station's down the hall, 3rd door on the left. We like ours black, 2 sugars." His tone was friendly enough, but the underlying message was clear. "You don't belong here." She didn't look up from her tablet, didn't acknowledge the comment at all. "Maybe she's deaf," someone suggested. "Or smart enough to know she's out of her depth," another replied. Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Kowalski, a Marine with 22 years of service and a chest full of ribbons, shook his head slowly. He'd seen every type pass through these briefing rooms. This woman was different somehow, though he couldn't put his finger on why. The way she sat perfectly still, but perfectly aware. Something about her set off his threat radar. but not in a dangerous way, in a professional way. Before he could voice his thoughts, Colonel James Briggs entered through the side door, followed by two intelligence officers carrying classified folders stamped with red warnings. "Gentlemen, seats," Briggs commanded. The operators settled immediately, their casual demeanor evaporating into professional focus. Briggs was old-school military, West Point graduate, Ranger qualified, combat commands in both Iraq and Afghanistan. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "We have a time-sensitive target package, high-value individual codenamed Wraith. Intelligence indicates he's currently holed up in a compound 3 kilometers from the Pakistani border." He nodded to one of the intelligence officers, who activated the main display. A satellite image appeared, showing a fortified compound nestled in a valley between two ridgelines. Multiple buildings, high walls, defensive positions clearly visible even from orbit. Wraith is responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces across the eastern provinces. We've been hunting him for 18 months. This is the first solid location we've had. The room leaned forward collectively. "The problem," Briggs continued, "is the geography." The image zoomed out, showing the surrounding terrain. The compound sits in a natural bowl, limited approaches, excellent defensive sightlines. Any ground assault will be exposed for at least 400 meters before reaching the walls. "Time for the Air Force to earn their keep," suggested a SEAL. "JDAM solves most problems." "Negative," Briggs said firmly. "Intelligence suggests Wraith is holding at least 3 Western hostages, aid workers kidnapped 6 weeks ago. We need boots on ground, positive identification, and surgical extraction. This is a capture or kill with hostage rescue component." The complexity of the mission settled over the room like a weight. "We need simultaneous overwatch on 3 different positions." Briggs indicated points on the map: North Ridge, East Ridge, and this elevated position here. He pointed to a particularly isolated outcropping. "This position provides sight lines into the compound's interior courtyard. That's where we believe Wraith will be." Harrison studied the map. "That primary position, what's the distance to target?" 1,400 meters, give or take. Variable mountain winds, elevation changes, potential for enemy counter-sniper operations. A low whistle came from one of the Marine scouts. "That's a hell of a shot even in perfect conditions." "And these won't be perfect conditions," Kowalski added. "We're looking at a night operation, right?" Briggs nodded. "Insertion at 0200. Assault at 0400. New moon. Minimal, ambient, light." The operators exchanged glances. This wasn't just difficult. This was approaching the edge of what was tactically feasible. "We're stretched thin on qualified snipers," Briggs admitted. "We've got combat losses, training rotations, and 2 other operations running simultaneously." "What about Mackenzie?" someone asked. "Master Sergeant Mackenzie's got the secondary position on the East Ridge. But for this primary overwatch..." Briggs trailed off, studying the map. In the back corner, the woman's fingers moved across her tablet screen, zooming in on the satellite imagery. Her lips moved silently, running numbers. Wind speeds, bullet drop, Coriolis effect, temperature gradients. Thompson noticed her movement and couldn't resist. "Hey, maybe our mystery guest has some ideas. You ever shoot anything before, sweetheart? Maybe a camera?" The room erupted in genuine laughter, the tension finding release in mockery. She looked up for the first time since Briggs had started talking. Her eyes met Thompson's directly, and for just a moment, something flickered there. Not anger, not embarrassment, something colder, more calculating. Then she spoke, her quiet voice somehow carrying across the entire room. "Grid reference 34.216, elevation 2,400 meters, wind from the northwest at 12 knots gusting to 15. That's your position, Alpha." She pointed at the map without standing up. "I'll take it." The laughter died instantly. Every operator in the room turned to stare at her. She continued, utterly calm. Position Bravo, grid 34.189, elevation 2350 meters. Clear sight line to the compound's west corridor and secondary entrance. Position Charlie, grid 34.224, elevation 2275. Overlapping fields of fire with Alpha covering the north approach and main courtyard. The silence was absolute. Harrison leaned forward slowly, his amusement completely gone. "You've been to this AO before." It wasn't a question. "3 times, she confirmed. "Different targets, same geography." "Impossible," muttered one of the intelligence officers. "This location was only confirmed 48 hours ago." Her expression didn't change. "The location was confirmed 48 hours ago. The terrain's been there for a few million years. I've operated in this valley before." Briggs cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, she takes the primary overwatch position. That's final." The room exploded with protests. "Colonel, with all due respect, that's a suicide position requiring... We don't even know who she..." "Enough." Briggs's voice cracked like a whip. "She takes the position. That is not open for debate. That is an order." Thompson stood up, his face flushed. "Sir, that overwatch requires expert-level marksmanship under combat conditions. We can't just hand it to some random person." The woman stood smoothly, slinging her pack over one shoulder. "Anyone want to see me qualify? Or are we wasting more time talking about my resume while the target package gets cold?" Mitchell stepped forward with a predatory grin. "Oh, I definitely want to see this. The range. 20 minutes. She nodded once. "Make it 15. We're already behind schedule." She walked toward the door. As she reached the exit, she paused and looked back at Briggs. "Colonel, you'll want to adjust your assault timeline. The moon sets at 0347, not 0400. You'll have approximately 8 minutes of total darkness before dawn twilight begins. That's your window." Then she was gone, leaving behind a room full of America's deadliest warriors, all wondering the same thing. Who the hell is she? The walk from the TOC to the shooting range took exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds. By the time the woman arrived, half the base had somehow gotten word. In places like FOB Rhino, news traveled faster than bullets. Marines found reasons to be near the range. Soldiers suddenly remembered they needed to zero their optics. Even contractors wandered over with casual air. Everyone knew why they were really there. The mysterious woman who thought she could hang with Tier 1 operators was about to get a reality check. Kowalski arrived with purpose in his stride. 22 years in the Corps had taught him to recognize pretenders. Something about this whole situation felt wrong. The colonel's insistence, the woman's quiet confidence, the way she'd rattled off those grid coordinates like she was reading a menu. He'd seen a lot in 2 decades of war. He'd seen politicians playing soldier, journalists pretending they understood combat, special forces wannabes who talked a good game until the bullets started flying. But he'd never seen someone quite like this woman. Young but not inexperienced, small but not weak, completely out of place, yet somehow absolutely certain of herself. The range master, a grizzled Army staff sergeant named Phil Dawson, was already setting up, shaking his head with amusement. "This is going to be good. Haven't seen someone crash and burn this bad since that Action News reporter tried to throw a grenade." The woman arrived alone, still carrying just that small backpack. She surveyed the range with methodical precision. Her eyes tracked the wind flags, the distance markers, the condition of the firing line. Her gaze lifted to the mountains beyond, reading the terrain like a book. Thompson was already there, along with Harrison, Mitchell, and at least a dozen other operators. Even Davis and Williams had wandered over, grinning like they'd won the lottery. "Hey, isn't that the lost journalist from the ECP?" Williams elbowed Davis. "Yeah, man, this is going to be hilarious." Kowalski stepped forward, his command presence silencing the murmurs. He'd been chewing on the situation for 15 minutes, and his sense of duty wouldn't let him stay quiet. These men were about to go into combat with their lives depending on Overwatch. Ma'am, he said, his voice firm but not unkind. With all due respect, I need to ask directly, what are your qualifications? This isn't a training exercise. This is a real-world operation where American lives will depend on precision fire support. If you miss, people die. Our people. The gathered crowd went quiet, recognizing the seriousness in Kowalski's tone. She turned to face him fully, and for the first time, people saw her really look at someone. Direct, professional, soldier to soldier. You're right to ask, Gunny, she said, and several people were surprised to hear respect in her voice. If I were in your position, I'd be asking the same thing. So answer the question, Kowalski pressed. What makes you qualified for the most critical position in this operation? She was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice carrying across the range. I've been doing this job since you were a corporal, Gunny. I've taken shots in conditions that would make tonight's operation look like a training day. I've operated in 12 different countries across 4 continents, and I've never, not once, missed a shot that cost an American life. Thompson snorted. Big words. Let's see if you can back them up. Harrison raised a hand, silencing Thompson. You said you've been to that valley 3 times. When? 2009, 2012, and 2016, she answered without hesitation. Different operations, all classified. The 3rd time I spent 6 days in a hide site on that North Ridge. I know every rock, every wind pattern, every thermal shift that happens when the sun sets behind those mountains. Mitchell's jaw tightened. I've got buddies who've operated in that region for years, and I've never heard of any woman running sniper overwatch. That's the point, she interrupted. You weren't supposed to hear about it. Dawson approached with a rifle case. What's your weapon preference, ma'am? She glanced at the case. What have you got? M110 SASS, M2010. Bear it if you really want to reach out. Start with the M110, standard issue, nothing fancy. Let's not waste time. Dawson opened the case, revealing a well-maintained M110 semi-automatic sniper system. She took it, her hands moving with practiced efficiency, checking the chamber, testing the bolt, examining the scope mounts, feeling the trigger pull. Every movement was economical, purposeful, no wasted motion. This'll do, she said. What's the 0? Should be good for 100 meters, but I'd verify. I will. She turned to Kowalski. What's your test, Gunny? What do I need to do to satisfy you that I won't get your men killed? Kowalski exchanged glances with Harrison. Target at 800 meters. 3-round group. Winds gusting between 8 and 12 knots from the northwest. Similar to what you'll face tonight. Acceptable. She moved to the firing line. Thompson leaned toward Wade. $20 says she can't even hit the berm. No bet, this is too easy. Davis called out from the crowd. Hey ma'am, you sure you don't want someone to show you how it works? That trigger can be a little tricky. A few laughs echoed across the range. She ignored them completely. Instead, she knelt beside the rifle, pulling out a small notebook and a mechanical pencil from her pack. For the next 60 seconds, she made calculations. Temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, altitude, Coriolis effect. Her pencil moved rapidly across the paper. Jesus, she's doing the math manually, muttered a Marine sniper. Nobody does that anymore. We've got ballistic computers. Computers can fail, Harrison said quietly. Old school skills don't. She finished her calculations, made adjustments to her scope, and checked the wind flags one more time. Then she settled into position. Prone, legs spread at the perfect angle, support hand positioned precisely, shooting hand relaxed but firm. Her body became part of the earth itself. The transformation was startling. The quiet woman in civilian clothes disappeared, replaced by something else entirely. A weapon system. A machine calibrated for one purpose. Her breathing slowed, becoming rhythmic. 4 counts in, hold. 4 counts out. Her heart rate dropped. The range fell silent. She acquired her sight picture. The wind shifted slightly. She waited. A gust passed. She waited. Then in the momentary calm between breaths of wind, she squeezed. The rifle barked. "Hit center mass," the spotter called out. She didn't celebrate. She simply cycled the bolt, acquired the sight picture again, waited for the wind, and squeezed. Hit, same hole. One more time, same routine, same precision. Hit, Jesus Christ, all 3 rounds through the same hole. The range erupted in murmurs. That wasn't just good shooting, that was exceptional shooting. Expert-level marksmanship under field conditions. Kowalski approached the spotting scope. Through the powerful optics, he could see the target at 800 meters. 3 shots grouped so tightly, they created a single, slightly elongated hole. Invariable wind, with an unfamiliar rifle. He straightened slowly, his professional assessment overriding his skepticism. Thompson wasn't satisfied. Lucky. Wind probably laid down at just the right time. Let's make it interesting. 1,200 meters. Moving wind. Let's see if beginner's luck holds. Several operators nodded agreement. 800 meters was good, but 1,200 was where the real shooters separated from the pretenders. She stood, brushing dust from her jeans. I'll need the M2010 for that distance. And fresh ammunition, preferably match grade if you've got it. We've got it, Dawson confirmed, respect creeping into his voice. As he retrieved the weapon, Harrison stepped closer. You're not just some analyst, are you? She met his eyes. No, sir, I'm not. What are you? She accepted the M2010 from Dawson. I'm the person who makes sure people like you get to go home to your families, sir. Then she moved back to the firing line, leaving Harrison and Kowalski exchanging significant looks. Gunny, Harrison said quietly, I think we might owe this woman an apology. Let's see if she can make the 1,200-meter shot first, Kowalski replied, but his tone had changed. The skepticism was gone. The woman settled into position again, this time with an even longer rifle, an even more difficult shot, and an audience that was finally starting to pay attention. The M2010 enhanced sniper rifle was a different beast entirely. Longer, heavier, chambered in .300 Winchester Magnum. The weapon weighed nearly 16 pounds fully loaded, and in the hands of an amateur, it kicked like an angry mule. She handled it like it was an extension of her own body. Dawson had set up the new target at exactly 1,247 meters, over 3/4 of a mile. At that distance, a human-sized target would appear smaller than a pencil eraser through the scope. Gravity would pull the bullet down over 30 feet. Wind would push it several feet left or right. The Coriolis effect would come into play. Temperature, humidity, even the spin drift of the bullet itself would matter. It was the kind of shot that separated professionals from masters. Thompson stood with arms crossed. Just so we're clear, ma'am, this isn't Call of Duty. You can't just point and click. That target's so far away, you're practically shooting at tomorrow. Mitchell nodded. Most shooters can't even see a target clearly at that range, let alone hit it. No shame in admitting it's beyond your capability. She didn't acknowledge them. Instead, she pulled out her notebook again, this time taking nearly 3 minutes for her calculations. The math was considerably more complex now. She referenced a small data card from her pack. Ballistic coefficients, muzzle velocities, atmospheric tables. Her pencil scratched across paper with mechanical precision. A crowd had gathered. Word had spread about the 800-meter performance. Nearly 40 personnel now lined the observation area. Master Sergeant William Mackenzie pushed through the crowd. At 53, he was old for active combat duty, but his skills had kept him in the fight. 2 silver stars, 4 bronze stars, over 200 confirmed kills across 3 wars. He'd trained half the snipers currently deployed in Afghanistan. Mac approached the firing line, studying her preparation with the critical eye of a master craftsman. He watched her check the rifle, watched her calculate, watched her read the wind flags with intensity that seemed almost meditative. "Winds shifting," he said, his gravelly voice carrying authority. "You've got gusts coming down from those mountains every 45 to 60 seconds. Plays hell with long-range accuracy." She glanced up at him, and for the first time someone saw something like recognition in her eyes. "Master Sergeant Mackenzie," he raised an eyebrow. "Do I know you?" "No, sir, but I know your work. You wrote the updated mountain windage tables in the Scout Sniper Manual, 2008 edition."
I still use them.
Mac's expression shifted. Surprise, quickly masked. "Those tables are only in the classified appendix. How would you have access?" "Because I needed them, sir." She returned to her calculations. "Your formula for thermal gradient compensation saved my life in the Hindu Kush. Twice." The range fell quieter. People were listening now. Really listening. Mac knelt beside her, studying her notebook. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly as he read her calculations. She wasn't using the simplified formulas they taught in basic sniper school. She was running full ballistic equations, compensating for variables most shooters never even considered. "You're accounting for vertical wind component," he said. "Mountains create updrafts as they heat. It'll push the round high if I don't compensate. Most snipers don't bother with that level of detail." She looked at him directly. "Most snipers don't have to. I do." Something passed between them, a recognition professional to professional. Max stood slowly. His entire demeanor changed. He turned to the crowd. "Everyone shut up. Give her silence." The authority in his voice was absolute. Even Thompson closed his mouth. She finished her calculations, made minute adjustments to her scope, then did something that made every experienced shooter take notice. She removed her watch and placed it beside the rifle, angling it so she could see the second hand. "What's she doing?" whispered a young Marine. "Timing the wind gusts," Harrison answered. "She's going to shoot between them." For 90 seconds, she simply watched and waited. Her eyes moved between the distant wind flags, the vegetation movement, and her watch. The crowd held its breath without realizing it. Then she settled into position. The transformation happened again. That shift from person to weapon system. Her breathing slowed to something almost inhuman. 4 counts in, 7-second hold. 6 counts out. Her finger touched the trigger. She waited. A gust swept across the range. She didn't move. The gust passed. In that brief moment of relative calm, the rifle cracked. Time seemed to slow. The bullet would take nearly 2 full seconds to reach the target. 2 seconds where wind, gravity, and a dozen other variables could push it off course. "Hit dead center," the observer called out. A murmur rippled through the crowd, but it was different now, not mockery, something closer to awe. Thompson's smug expression faltered. "Could be luck." She didn't respond. She simply cycled the bolt, loaded another round, and checked her watch again. Waiting. Reading the wind. Being patient. Another gust. She waited. Calm. She fired. Hit right next to the first. Mitchell's arms slowly uncrossed. His confident smirk had disappeared entirely. One more time. Same routine, same absolute focus. But the wind picked up stronger this time. Most shooters would wait it out, but she adjusted her aim point, compensating for the increased wind, and fired during the gust. Hit. All 3 rounds inside a 6-inch group at 1,247 meters. The range exploded in genuine shock. "That's impossible," Thompson said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Nobody shoots that well with an unfamiliar rifle." Mac walked to the spotting scope. What he saw made him shake his head slowly. 3 rounds grouped tightly enough to cover with a softball. Invariable mountain winds. With a rifle she'd never fired before today. After less than 5 minutes of preparation. He'd been shooting for 35 years. He'd trained some of the best snipers in the military, and he'd just watched someone perform at a level he'd rarely seen outside of competition. Mac turned from the scope, his grizzled face unreadable. He walked slowly back to where she was standing. He stopped in front of her. "Who trained you?" She met his eyes. "Fort Benning, 2006. Advanced Marksmanship Unit. Then Bragg. Then other places that don't have names on maps." Mac's eyes narrowed. "Benning, 2006. That was when they ran the pilot program. The one everyone said failed." "It didn't fail. They just decided it was too politically complicated to continue." "3 women made it through the full course," Max said slowly. "I was there. I was one of the instructors." "I know. One instructor said the candidates weren't ready, that they didn't meet standards." She looked at him steadily. "One instructor said that. The one who didn't want us there in the first place. The other 6 instructors recommended all 3 of us for graduation. We'd outperformed 70% of the male candidates in that same class." "So what happened?" Harrison asked. "Politics. Someone at the Pentagon decided it was too controversial. The program was quietly shut down. We were given other assignments, told to keep quiet about it." "But you kept shooting," Max said. "I kept working. Shooting was just part of it." Thompson had finally found his voice again. "Okay, fine, you can shoot, but that doesn't mean you're ready for tonight's operation. Combat is different. Target shooting on a range with no time pressure, no one shooting back." She turned to him, and the look in her eyes stopped him mid-sentence. "Petty Officer Thompson, 3 years ago, Syria, Operation Inherent Resolve. There was a SEAL team pinned down in a compound outside Raqqa. They called for air support, but the weather had grounded most assets. Someone else provided overwatch from a building 1,600 meters away. 17 kills in 40 minutes. Saved the entire team. You were there." Thompson's face went pale. "The Angel Sniper, that was you?" "I don't use that call sign, but yes, I was there." The range had gone absolutely silent. Mac's weathered face split into something that might have been a smile. "Master Sergeant William Mackenzie, it's an honor." She shook his hand. "The honor's mine, Sergeant. Your tables really did save my life." Harrison stepped forward, all traces of skepticism gone. "Captain Bradley Harrison, Delta Force. Ma'am, I think I speak for everyone here when I say we owe you an apology." "No apology necessary, Captain. You didn't know. That's how it was supposed to be." Davis and Williams had pushed to the front of the crowd, their faces burning with embarrassment. She saw them and allowed herself the smallest hint of a smile. "Marines, you did your job at the ECP. You questioned something that didn't make sense. That's exactly what you should have done." The sun was setting now, painting the mountains in shades of orange and purple. The same mountains where in just a few hours she'd be making shots that made this demonstration look easy. Kowalski stepped forward. "Ma'am, what's your name? Your real name?" She shouldered her pack. "Chief Warrant Officer 5 Samantha Blackwell. But tonight, call me Guardian Angel." The sun had dipped below the mountains, leaving FOB Rhino bathed in purple twilight. The temperature dropped 15 degrees in 30 minutes, the desert's heat bleeding away into a sky full of stars. Out here, the Milky Way stretched across the heavens like a river of light. Chief Warrant Officer 5 Samantha Blackwell sat in a corner of the armory, methodically preparing her kit for the night's operation. Around her, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The mockery was gone, replaced by reverent silence mixed with intense curiosity. Word had spread like wildfire through the base. The mysterious woman wasn't just some analyst, she was Ghost, a sniper so classified that her service records had been scrubbed. The Angel sniper from Syria that SEAL teams whispered about. Mitchell approached cautiously, his earlier bravado completely abandoned. "Ma'am, I need to apologize. The things I said were unprofessional and disrespectful." "Forgotten," Sam said, without looking up from the rifle she was cleaning. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, each motion automatic. "You reacted to what you saw. That's human nature. Still, I was out of line." Now she did look up. "Sergeant, in 6 hours you're going to fast rope into a hot landing zone with people shooting at you. I need you focused on that, not on guilt about some words. Are we clear? Yes, ma'am. Good. Now tell me about your team's entry point. I saw the briefing, but I want to hear it from you. Mitchell blinked, surprised she was asking his opinion. We're coming in from the north using the wadi for concealment. It gives us cover until we're within 50 meters of the compound wall. And if they've posted sentries along that wadi, that's where your overwatch comes in, ma'am. She nodded. I'll have eyes on that approach vector from the moment you start your move. Anyone pops up with a weapon, they won't get a chance to use it. You have my word. Something in the way she said it, the absolute certainty, made Mitchell believe her completely. He nodded and moved away, carrying reassurance he hadn't felt an hour ago. Harrison entered the armory carrying a hard case with specialized equipment markings. CW5 Blackwell, got something for you. She stood respectfully. Sir. He opened the case, revealing a custom rifle that made even the hardened operators take notice. An Accuracy International AX-50 chambered in 50 BMG, but this wasn't stock. It had been modified with a Schmidt and Bender scope, a custom suppressor, and tactical modifications that spoke of serious money and purpose. This is Master Sergeant Mackenzie's personal weapon, Harrison explained. He heard about tonight's mission and insisted you use it. Said if you're going to be keeping his boys alive, you should have the best tool for the job. Sam ran her hand along the rifle's receiver, her expression showing the first real emotion anyone had seen from her. Respect, almost reverence. I know this weapon. Mac was in Kandahar, 2011. I watched him make a shot at 1,920 meters. Still one of the most impressive pieces of shooting I've ever witnessed. He said you'd remember. He also said to tell you he's sorry he ever doubted that women could shoot. She looked up sharply. Mac was one of the instructors who recommended us for graduation? He was. He never said anything because he was under orders not to. But he's been following your career from a distance ever since, through channels that officially don't exist. Harrison paused. Turns out you've got more advocates in the Spec Ops community than you knew. Before Sam could respond, Mac himself entered carrying an armful of equipment. Range cards for every possible position in that valley. I made them myself over 3 deployments. Night vision optics, mil-spec, just serviced. And this. He held up a small weathered notebook, its pages worn from use and stained with everything from sweat to mud to what might have been blood. This is my personal range book. 30 years of notes, wind calls, corrections for every condition I've ever encountered. Some of these observations saved my life. They might save yours. Sam took the notebook carefully, understanding the significance. A sniper's range book was deeply personal, filled with hard-won knowledge. It was like a surgeon offering his technique manual. Master Sergeant, I can't take this. You can and you will, he interrupted, his voice firm. Because tonight you're not just making shots, you're protecting my Marines. Some of those kids down there are 19, 20 years old. They've got families waiting for them, futures ahead of them. Your job is to make sure they survive to see all that. She met his eyes, understanding the weight he was placing on her shoulders. I won't let them down. I know you won't. That's why I'm giving you the book. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Page 47. There's a note about wind patterns in mountain valleys during temperature inversions. You'll be shooting during one tonight. Don't forget to compensate for the vertical component. I won't. Thank you, Sergeant. After Mac left, the armory had filled with more operators, all making final preparations. But the energy was different now. They weren't watching her with skepticism. They were watching with respect. Thompson approached, his swagger replaced with genuine humility. His eyes were red. Ma'am, about Syria. My team, we thought we were dead. 30+ hostiles, ammunition running low, wounded. We couldn't evacuate. Then they just started dropping. We never saw the shooter. Command told us it was classified. He paused, swallowing hard. I just wanted to say thank you. My daughter was born 8 months after that mission. Grace Michelle Thompson. If you hadn't been there, she wouldn't exist. Sam's expression softened slightly. What's her name again? Grace. Grace Michelle Thompson. That's beautiful. You make sure you get home to her tonight, Petty Officer. Follow your training, trust your team, and let me handle the long-range problems. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Kowalski entered with a cup of coffee, setting it beside her without comment. It was a small gesture, but significant. Warriors sharing coffee before a mission was an old tradition. Gunny, she acknowledged. CW5, he replied, then lowered his voice. I've been doing this for 22 years. What you did on that range today, that wasn't just skill, that was art. It's mathematics and practice, Gunny, nothing more. Bullshit, he said bluntly, but not unkindly. I've seen plenty of people with the math and the practice. What you've got is different. It's instinct developed over countless hours. You don't just shoot targets, you solve problems. She took a sip of the coffee. Strong, black, probably terrible, but exactly what she needed. Every shot is a problem, Gunny. Variables to account for, risks to manage, consequences to accept. Tonight's problems just happen to have higher stakes. And you're not nervous. For the first time, she allowed herself a small, honest smile. Terrified every single time. The day I stop being scared is the day I need to retire. Because fear keeps you sharp. It keeps you from getting cocky, from making stupid mistakes. I'm scared because I understand exactly what's at stake. Kowalski studied her face. You know what? I think you're going to do just fine. Colonel Briggs appeared in the doorway. Final briefing in 15 minutes, people. Full kit, full attention. This is the real deal. The armory emptied quickly. Sam remained, finishing her equipment check with methodical precision. Nothing rushed, nothing overlooked. She loaded magazines, each round pressed into place with firm pressure. Checked radio frequencies, verified her night vision optics. Reviewed Mac's notes one final time. The AIAX-50 lay before her, weighing 27 pounds, fully equipped. At ranges beyond 1,500 meters, the 50 BMG round would retain enough energy to punch through light armor. Tonight, she'd be shooting at distances where the bullet would take over 2 seconds to reach its target, where she'd need to account for the Earth's rotation, where a single miscalculation could mean the difference between a perfect shot and a catastrophic miss. No pressure. She assembled her gear, feeling the familiar weight settle onto her body. Plate carrier, ammunition, medical kit, communications equipment, survival gear. 60 pounds of equipment that she'd carry into the mountains, into a position she'd occupy for hours in freezing temperatures. As she stood fully kitted, Harrison reappeared. Ready, CW5? She shouldered Mac's rifle, feeling its perfect balance. Ready, sir. Let's go to work. The MH-60 Blackhawk's rotors beat the cold night air as it skimmed low over the Afghan mountains, flying nap of the earth to avoid radar detection. Inside the cramped cabin, Sam sat motionless among the insertion team, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air at 8,000 feet. The helicopter's crew chief had stopped giving her concerned looks after Harrison quietly explained who she was. Now he watched her with the same respectful attention he gave the other operators. 2 minutes, the pilot's voice crackled through their headsets. Sam performed one final check of her equipment. The AIA X-50 was secured across her chest. Magazines were properly seated. Communications were functioning. Night vision was calibrated. Everything was perfect because anything less could mean death. The helicopter banked hard, dropping into a narrow valley. Through the open doors, she could see terrain rushing past in shades of green through her night vision. Rocky outcroppings, sparse vegetation, ancient mountains that had witnessed countless wars. 30 seconds. Get ready. The crew chief gave her a thumbs up. She returned it, then moved to the door as the Blackhawk flared into a hover. The rotor wash created a tornado of dust in loose rock. Go, go, go! Sam fast roped down 40 feet in less than 6 seconds, her gloved hands controlling her descent with practiced precision. Her boots hit rocky ground. She released the rope and moved away from the landing zone as the helicopter thundered back into the sky. Silence descended like a blanket. She was alone. Her position was a rocky outcrop 2,400 meters from the target compound, exactly where she'd identified in the briefing. The approach had taken 15 minutes of careful movement through terrain that would kill you if you made one wrong step. Now she lay prone behind a carefully selected position that gave her clear sightlines while providing concealment from below. Through her scope, the compound appeared as a collection of gray structures in the green glow of night vision. Thermal imaging revealed heat signatures, guards on patrol, vehicles, generators. "Guardian Angel in position," she whispered into her radio. "Copy, Guardian Angel. All elements proceeding to assault positions. Stand by." Sam settled into her shooting position, becoming part of the mountain itself. Her breathing slowed. Her heart rate dropped. She entered that state of hyper-awareness that combat snipers called the zone. She ranged multiple points around the compound: 1,387 meters to the north wall, 1,412 meters to the main gate, 1,453 meters to the southern corner. Wind speed at 6 knots, gusting to 9. Temperature 38 degrees. The thermal inversion Mac had warned about was already forming. "All elements, this is actual. Begin approach in 60 seconds. Sam watched through her scope as American warriors began their movement. Operators flowed through the darkness like deadly shadows. Mitchell's Ranger team advanced through the northern wadi. Thompson's SEAL element moved along the eastern ridge. A Marine Force recon team secured the southern approach. And somewhere in that compound, a terrorist leader was sleeping, unaware that tonight his war would end. "Guardian Angel, I've got movement on the north wall." Mitchell's voice was tight with tension. 3 tangos, armed, watching our approach vector." Sam's scope found them immediately. 3 fighters carrying AK-47s, positioned on the compound's northern wall at 1,387 meters. In approximately 30 seconds, they'd spot Mitchell's team. "I have the shot," Sam said calmly. "Stand by." The wind gusted. She waited. The gust passed. Her crosshairs settled on the first target's center mass. She accounted for the distance, the wind, the temperature, the downward angle, the thermal inversion. All of it processed in less than 2 seconds. She squeezed the trigger. The suppressed rifle made a sound like a thick cough. Through the scope, she watched the 50 BMG round cover nearly 3/4 of a mile in just over 2 seconds. The first fighter dropped without a sound. His companions didn't react immediately. One bent down to check on his fallen comrade. Sam's second round caught him in the upper chest. The third fighter grabbed his radio. Sam's third shot removed that problem. 3 for 3 in under 8 seconds. "North wall clear, Bravo. You're good to move." "Copy, Guardian Angel. Holy shit, I didn't even see you shoot." The mission continued. Sam became the silent guardian watching over the operation. Her calm voice on the radio became the most reassuring sound in the chaos. Contact right! We've got fighters pouring out of the eastern building." Thompson's voice erupted with gunfire behind it. Sam's scope swept to the eastern structure. 6, 7, 8 enemy fighters rushing out, taking positions, suppressing the SEAL team with automatic weapons fire. "I've got them. Get your heads down." Her rifle spoke 4 times in rapid succession. 4 targets at 1,411 meters. 4 precise shots. 4 eliminated threats. "East side neutralized. Keep moving." "Guardian Angel, you're a goddamn artist." But there was no time for praise. More fighters were emerging. Sam worked her rifle like a surgeon with a scalpel. A fighter with an RPG on a rooftop. Eliminated at 1,456 meters. 2 gunmen flanking the Marine team. Both down before they could fire. A driver running toward a truck-mounted machine gun stopped permanently at 1,389 meters. Her calm voice became the soundtrack of the operation. Bravo, you've got two tangos behind the blue sedan. You're 11 o'clock. 2 shots. Problem solved. Charlie team, hostile in the second floor window, northeast corner. 1 shot. Threat eliminated. The assault teams pushed deeper, their confidence growing with each threat that disappeared before it could harm them. 17 minutes into the operation, Harrison's voice came through urgent. Guardian Angel, we've got the package, but he's running. Black sedan exiting through the south gate, heading for the Pakistani border. Through her scope, Sam saw it. A vehicle racing away, kicking up a dust trail. The high-value target was attempting to escape. The vehicle was moving at approximately 40 kilometers per hour. The range was 1,623 meters and increasing. The shot required her to lead the target, compensating for its movement, the distance, the wind, and fire through the rear window without killing hostages. It was the kind of shot that appeared in sniper training manuals under extremely difficult, low probability of success. Sam calculated, adjusted, and fired. The 50 BMG round punched through the sedan's rear window. The vehicle swerved violently, then crashed into a ravine. Target vehicle disabled. Package neutralized. The radio erupted in controlled celebration. The mission was a success. American forces were extracting with 0 casualties. In an Iraqi outcrop 2,400 meters away, a woman who'd been laughed at just hours earlier safed her weapon and prepared for extraction, having just delivered 17 perfect shots that saved countless American lives. All elements, this is actual. Mission success. Begin extract procedures. Guardian Angel. Briggs paused. Outstanding work doesn't begin to cover it. You just saved this entire operation. Sam allowed herself a small smile in the darkness. Just doing my job, sir. Guardian Angel standing by for extraction. Above, she could already hear the distant thump of helicopter rotors coming to bring her home. Dawn broke over the Hindu Kush mountains in shades of gold and amber. The Black Hawk carrying Sam touched down at FOB Rhino just as the sun crested the eastern peaks. She was the last one off the helicopter. The assault teams had returned 30 minutes earlier, but Sam had stayed at her position until the very last moment, providing overwatch as every single operator extracted safely. Now, as she stepped onto the tarmac, every muscle in her body screamed in protest. She'd been lying motionless in a rocky hide for over 4 hours in near-freezing temperatures. Her face was streaked with camouflage paint and dust. Her tactical gear was caked with grime. The AIAX-50 hung across her chest, still smelling of gunpowder. Her eyes were red-rimmed from hours behind the scope. Her hands trembled slightly from adrenaline finally wearing off. She looked like what she was, a warrior returning from battle. As the helicopter's rotors wound down, Sam began the slow walk toward the TOC. Every step was deliberate, her body running on reserves built up over 7 combat deployments. Then she noticed them. Officers were emerging from buildings, forming up along the path between the landing zone and the TOC. Not casually, they were lining up deliberately, standing at attention. Marines from the gate, Davis and Williams, their smirks replaced with reverence. The Rangers from Mitchell's team, Thompson's SEAL element, the Marine Force Recon team, Delta operators, all of them standing in formation, all of them watching her approach. Sam slowed, confused. This wasn't standard procedure. Then she saw him. Commander Jake Morrison stood at the center of the formation, directly in her path. At 46, he was a living legend in the SEAL community. 4 combat deployments, a Navy Cross, 2 Silver Stars. His dress uniform was immaculate despite the early hour, every ribbon and medal perfectly aligned. His weathered face was unreadable, but his eyes carried the weight of what he'd seen, what he knew, what he understood. Behind him stood Harrison, Mac beside him, Kowalski, Mitchell. Every operator who'd been in that briefing room when she'd been dismissed as a joke. Sam stopped 10 feet from Morrison, suddenly very aware of how she must look. Exhausted, dirty, a stark contrast to the crisp uniforms around her. Morrison's hand snapped up in a crisp, perfect salute. The movement was so sudden, so unexpected, that Sam froze. For a fraction of a second, the professional mask slipped and pure surprise crossed her face. Then training took over. Her own hand rose, returning the salute despite the rifle across her chest, despite the exhaustion, despite the trembling in her fingers. But Morrison didn't lower his salute. He held it longer than regulation required, longer than rank demanded. This wasn't just a formal greeting. This was respect. Pure, unqualified, warrior-to-warrior respect. One by one, the operators around them came to attention and rendered salutes. Marines who joked about her, SEALs who'd laughed, Rangers who doubted, all of them saluting now, holding the gesture with the same intensity as Morrison. The silence was profound. Sam felt something unfamiliar burning behind her eyes. In 7 deployments through countless operations, she'd maintained professional composure, but this threatened to crack the armor she'd built around herself. Finally, Morrison lowered his salute. Sam followed suit. When Morrison spoke, his gravelly voice carried across the formation. Chief Warrant Officer Blackwell, on behalf of every operator who made it home this morning, because of your skill and dedication, thank you. He paused. It is an honor to serve with you again. Again, sir? Syria, 2018. You provided overwatch for my team during a hostage extraction that went sideways. We were pinned down, taking casualties, completely exposed. Then our attackers started dropping from positions we couldn't even see. Command told us later it was classified support. He smiled slightly. I spent 2 years trying to find out who saved my team that day. Wasn't until 6 months ago that I got confirmation it was you. Sam's throat tightened. She remembered that operation vividly, one of the closest calls of her career. You were just doing your job, sir. I was doing mine. Your job saved 15 American lives that day. Last night you saved 37 more. That's not just doing a job, CW5. That's being exceptional at a job most people can't even attempt. Thompson stepped forward, his eyes wet. Ma'am, my daughter Grace, she exists because you kept me alive in Syria. I will never, ever forget that. Around the formation, heads nodded. These men understood the weight of what she'd done. Mitchell approached, extending his hand. Ma'am, you called every shot last night with surgical precision. You didn't just eliminate threats, you gave us confidence. When you said an area was clear, we knew it was clear. That kind of trust saves lives. She shook his hand. You made it easy, Sergeant. Your team executed perfectly. Because we had the best overwatch in the world, he replied, saluting again. Mac pushed through the crowd, his weathered face showing rare emotion. 35 years I've been shooting. I've seen maybe 5, 6 people in my entire career who had what you've got. That thing that separates good shooters from legendary ones. He extended his hand. It's been an honor, CW5. Davis and Martinez approached, both looking like they wanted to disappear. Ma'am, Davis started, his voice cracking. What we said at the gate were based on what you saw, Sam interrupted gently. You didn't know. I'm not offended, Lance Corporal, but I hope you learned something. Yes, ma'am, William said firmly. Never judge a warrior by their appearance. Judge them by their actions. Smart man, she allowed herself a small smile. Now both of you get some coffee and rest. Briggs appeared. CW5 Blackwell. Preliminary after-action reports indicate 17 confirmed eliminations, 0 friendly casualties, and a successful mission completion that exceeded all expectations. You performed flawlessly under pressure. Thank you, sir. The assault teams made it possible. The assault teams are alive because of you. He glanced at Morrison. I've already forwarded a commendation for your actions last night. This won't go unrecognized. Morrison stepped closer, lowering his voice. There's a lot of us out here who've known about you for years, Sam. Quiet professionals who've been following your career through the shadows. You've got more advocates than you realize. More people who understand what you've sacrificed, what you've accomplished, and what you represent. She met his eyes, seeing genuine respect. I never wanted recognition, sir. I just wanted to do the work. I know, Morrison replied. That's exactly why you deserve it. The sun had fully risen now, bathing the base in warm light. The formation began to break up as operators returned to their duties, but each one made a point of acknowledging Sam as they passed. A nod, a handshake, a quiet word of thanks. The woman who'd been laughed at 24 hours ago now walked toward the TOC, surrounded by respect, her path cleared by warriors who understood exactly what she was worth. She'd proven them wrong, not with words, but with actions, not with anger, but with competence, not by demanding respect, but by earning it the only way that mattered, through skill demonstrated under pressure, through lives saved when everything hung in the balance, through 17 perfect shots in the darkness that meant 37 men would see another sunrise. Guardian Angel, Ghost, Chief Warrant Officer 5, Samantha Blackwell, a legend who never wanted to be one, a warrior who just wanted to do the work. And somewhere in the mountains of Afghanistan, there would always be someone watching, someone protecting, someone making the impossible shots when it mattered most. The lesson would endure long after she was gone. Never underestimate the warrior in front of you, because the deadliest weapons often come in unexpected packages.